This book is quite the sorry specimen. I bought this one from a Minnesota library, and the kids in Minnesota clearly love this thing. It's crinkled, ragged, and in pieces like one of my old roommate's underwear. Pages falling out everywhere, no modesty whatsoever, just letting it all hang out. You can rest assured this book has been abused by more booger-handed kids than any other choose-your-own-adventure book I've ever dug up. So what is this book that Minnesota loved it so much? Vanished is about the Bermuda Triangle. As a kid, this is a topic that would have gotten me excited to read, but the me of today looked at this and assumed I was in for something hokey. Turns out this book isn't so bad. Deborah LeMay Goodman, and hopefully I pronounced that right, it's how I've always said it, so just deal with it, has actually managed to write a reasonably entertaining book here that also juggles quite a few different scenarios without coming up shallow on them. Something other books in this series had a problem with. Some of Montgomery's books, for instance, would have tons of different plot points, but they were a mile wide and an inch deep. Here, Goodman actually tries to fill out each branch and mostly succeeds. There are a few points where an ending seemed to be unwarranted and the story feels like it could have continued, but for the most part, that is avoided in this book. In Vanished, you play as a girl and you've just received your pilot's license. You and your friend Andrea are awaiting your other friend Tony, whereupon you will take them on a flight in your parents' small plane around Miami, because that's how gangster you are. Tony shows up breathless, exclaiming that your other friend Jill has gone missing while sailing with her family. When Tony relays their last known location, Andrea cries,
"It's the Bermuda Triangle! This time it's gotten Jill!"
Oh, Andrea. On a side note, choose-your-own-adventure books generally portrayed the reader as a boy in the illustrations, or sometimes as androgynous to allow the reader to draw their own conclusion, but sometimes the illustrations portrayed you as a female, though this wasn't as common. I just realized 3 of the last 4 books I've done for this video series are female characters. The 4th one was not female, but was in fact Space Elvis, a heinous creature from planet Montgomery. Dear mother of God. So Tony is skeptical about the Bermuda Triangle stuff, like any upstanding fine young person, and Andrea's panicked like some damn fiend with no Zoloft. However, you all agree that you need to go search for Jill, because you're all wonderful, empathetic people, and the book would be stupid if you didn't. The plot branches here into 2 main storylines. You can search for Jill by air or by sea, and that sounds reasonable. There are no options to search via donkey or railroads, as these would be silly. If you choose to go by plane, then the story revolves around yourself and Andrea. Tony does not come with you. He has a boat. Pimps don't ride in little planes. You decide to retrace Jill's path to the last known island she was headed for, but you also notice in another direction a yellow haze. No drugs have been ingested on this trip, so what this is cannot be rightly explained. You can choose to explore that groovy fog, or just keep tracing Jill's path. The sensible thing here, of course, would be to trace Jill's path, but you're kids, damn it. Where's the adventure in that? If you investigate this yellow haze, your plane begins glowing and your instruments go crazy like Mike Muir sans Pepsi. Needless to say, Andrea, the poster child for medical marijuana, starts to panic. At this point, she jumps out of the plane, unaided by any hallucinogens. You can dive out as well, because at this point, hey, whatever. Or try to regain control of the plane, like some sort of sensible human being. If you decide to stay on the plane, things get really weird. You can time travel to a future where there are few humans but lots of robots everywhere, or even further into the future where you are the only human. Or you can try to go home but end up at the wrong time and then live with yourself, but the other you is 2 years younger than you. This is funny because the book never even mentions how your parents react to this scientific freakout. Or maybe you even wind up living on Mars in the future and eventually becoming the mayor of a city that you've named New Miami. If you bail out of the plane, you might wind up on an island building a hut and living off the land together with Andrea for over 600 days. This scenario either wound up sexy as hell or was torture. We may never know. Goodman spared the details. I, for one, feel cheated. Or maybe headed out to sea in a life raft and getting rescued by the Coast Guard. It's also possible you and Andrea may wind up on another island and find a treasure chest. At this point, you might split up and never see Andrea again, but still manage to come home with the treasure, never knowing what happened to her. Or you might spend the night alone with the treasure as Andrea goes to get help, and then you listen to the ghostly whispers of other people around you at night as the sky turns strange colors. You might even discover pirates from another time on the island with you, looking for the treasure you just dug up, accuse you of being the thief and belligerently choke you to death, whereupon you're transported to another realm, where this same scenario goes on forever and you're never heard from again. Ah, there you are, my sweet classic choose-your-own-adventure ending. The other storyline will have all 3 of you on Tony's boat like a bunch of ballers looking for some debris that you've recently heard about floating around on the water. Tony warns of modern-day pirates and doesn't want to get his boat stolen. It's hard out here for a pimp. You can find an unmarked yacht and decide whether or not to explore it to see if anyone needs help. You might also become the victim of a kidnapping and get caught up with the very pirates Tony warned about. Sensible Tony. Why will no one listen to him? You might learn of a new word, seish, which doesn't matter because it immediately kills you. Or, and here's where the business end of this stick gets real weird, you might be boarded by damn fishmen who kidnap you and take you below the ocean to a fish people city built inside of huge fish skin bubbles. You are tied up and put to work scaling fish. These fish people are the descendants of the citizens of Atlantis. The hell just happened here? This is where other writers might just go ahead and set up a couple of endings and be done, but not Goodman. She leans into this monkey business. You might escape from this point, or you might wind up in a worse situation. Shark bait. This story branch actually goes on for a bit. Goodman, I salute you for this odd plot twist. If you're not captured by the damn fishmen, the three of you might wind up investigating a coral reef where you'll find help scrawled in the sand. Either someone actually got marooned here, or there's another image drawn on the sand beyond the reef. The decision is risky since you might destroy the boat in the process, but think of the lulls. There's also the issue of some strange underwater lights, and if you explore this branch, get ready for a big weird detour. I don't want to say it's aliens, but it's aliens from another world, and they take you with them to live on their world, and then maybe even send you back to Earth one day and try to avert a nuclear war. Or you can tell them you want to stay on Earth, at which point they erase your memory of them. That is, unless you outsmart them and keep your memories, in which case you might wind up in a mental institution. Once again, Goodman introduces a strange plot branch, but opts to fill it out instead of using it as some throwaway sidetrack. Bravo for weirdness. Some of the endings you may encounter in this book: killed in a water spout, caught by the fish people trying to escape and then being killed, destroying and sinking the boat and having to call the Coast Guard, escaping the fish world and destroying their bubble in the process, which causes their city to fill up with water and kill everyone. Why can't fish people breathe underwater? Stranded in the ocean and then getting saved, living the rest of your life on Mars totally happy, being captured by aliens after you betrayed their secrecy and then being sent to live the rest of your life on another planet that's 1,000 times worse than Earth, murdered after an unfortunate surprise tussle with a giant squid, turning down the offer to travel to another planet and waking up alone and confused on a boat in the ocean, slipping on a pillow and accidentally hitting buttons on a computer which command the robots of the future to kill you. Let me reiterate that. You slipped on a pillow and died. Being in a gun battle with pirates as the Coast Guard closes in. Drowning as your plane gets pulled into the ocean by an unknown force, unknown by you. Andrea knows. Murdered by pirates who casually toss you into the ocean with a cinder block tied to your feet. Look at this guy. He seems ambivalent. Doesn't appear to even know why the hell he's done this, but he's certain that it's no big deal. Filing a report with the FAA about what happened with your plane going nuts, but the dude is like, whatever, bitches. Also, even though there are multiple endings that are considered good, there is only one ending in which you complete your original goal, find and rescue Jill. I love that. I started this book with trepidation, but it turned out to be a pretty decent one. Goodman goes in lots of different places, but tries to fill them all without lots of cheap, abrupt endings. This book gets really weird in a few places, and you would hope so given the subject matter. The artwork is by Frank Bull, so there's nothing bad to say there, great as usual. Vanish turned out to be a pretty good entry in the series. This one's worth a look. Until whatever the hell I read next time.